The Detroit Lions were so close in 2024 after an extremely dominant season. Now, after losing both their coordinators, they're looking to retool and get back to their dominant form and potentially hoist the Lombardi trophy at the end of the season. My name's Tyler, here with my brother Ryan, and we are going to break down our first mock free agency for the Lions in 2025. Before we get into that, if you like the content that we put out and you want to get notified when new videos come out, the easiest way is hitting that subscribe button, tackling that bell, and while you're at it, leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you want to see the Lions do this offseason. And Ryan, let's pull up the free agency here. So Lions are coming into the offseason with about 51 million in cap space. They have a lot of free agents, but to be fair, they also had to sign a lot of people because they had one of the wildest injury seasons that I could ever think of.
Yeah.
And that's what's pretty interesting too about some of these top names, as well as there were so many injuries, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They were able to actually see some good film, or at least get film on some of their younger talent to maybe help them with some of their decision making. And so, Ryan, with some of these guys here, and there's a lot of names, who are some of the top guys that they're going to be having conversations on the most on whether or not to keep or not to keep and let walk in free agency?
Yeah, I think these guys up here at the top, you think Kevin Zeitler, Carlton Davis, Levi Onwuzurike, Tim Patrick is up there. You have Dan Skipper, Derek Barnes is there. And then you start to get down to like some of these like veteran guys, like Emmanuel Mosley, John Kaminsky, like some of the guys that might have had injuries this past season. Marcus Davenport is another one as well, that I think you can kind of see uh, and make some case for re-signing. But the fact of the matter is the Lions are in a tough fish situation. It's a good problem to have because they have a lot of good players on the team right now. But in 2026, they have some, I don't want to say cap space issues because right now they still have positive cap space, but they do have Aidan Hutchinson, Amik Robertson, and Jameson Williams all coming up on contracts. So I do think it is going to be interesting to kind of see what they do in that situation to kind of clear up some cap space, and we do kind of take that into mind as or keep that in mind as we get into some of the free agent targets and the free agent talk that we're about to get into right now. So let's get kind of start things off. So the first phase of this is we do internal free agency, then we do external free agency. So the first part of internal free agency is just kind of clearing up some cap space. So to start, the Lions have about 58 million in cap space this offseason to start. We did make a couple cuts. So we did cut Khalif Raymond and we also cut Zadarius Smith as well. Khalif Raymond, just the production wasn't there to justify him coming back. And then also too, we re-signed another receiver that just had better production and like for the amount of snaps. And then Zadarius Smith, he's just owed some roster bonuses, and I feel like the Lions are going to have to make a tough decision here because that $5.7 million, yeah, that's what goes on the cap. But I believe at the start of the season, he's owed like another 7 or 11 million. Is that right?
Something it might be a little bit less. It might be maybe something closer to like 9 or 10. And then there's some roster bonuses that he can go and get. And maybe they end up keeping it because he did have a pretty big impact when they first got out. But it's something similar to your point is if you also just kind of think forward to 2026 as well, will some of that money be sent over, or could that's money that could potentially roll over into next year to help pay for some of the more core players around. And I think also too with that is with this draft class as well. It so many defensive ends that they can go out and get that would kind of fit this style of defense that they want to go and play. I think it's best to go and save money that way, and go and get a younger guy that you can go and build around, go across from Aidan Hutchinson. But that
Mhm.
being said, though, if they roll with the idea of having Zadarius Smith go across from Aidan Hutchinson, I would really like that also. It's more just about the money side of things. And so
Mhm.
I think the pair would fit really well together. And frankly, it still wouldn't stop you, I think, from getting an edge rusher. But we ended up deciding on we wanted the $5.5 million this year and avoid that being on the cap space, and also 5.5 million next year as well. So we ended up moving on from them, and that was pretty much it from
Yeah.
our end on who could have been cut. I'm sure there's bunch of guys down below that are going to end up getting cut that could have helped out with the cap. But we normally ended up not doing these for the teams just because a lot of those guys they end up getting paid $1 million anyways as they're just rotational pieces back and forth. And so, really focusing on more of the main players here and the key contributors as well. A couple of the guys that we did end up letting walk in free agency, Ryan, if you want to scroll up just a little bit on the right column there. So we did end up letting Carlton Davis walk, Allen Robinson, and Al Quaiden Muhammad also walk as well. But we ended up keeping Kevin Zietler as well. I ended up keeping Kevin Zietler, really focusing on continuity on that offensive line. He's been a staple there in Detroit for a long time, one of the top guards last season. So running back with him one more time, but we're going to talk about some other potential options that they might do and fill in that left guard spot here in a little bit. Ryan already mentioned Tim Patrick. I really liked what Tim Patrick brought to the team here. I will
Yeah.
say if Detroit doesn't end up signing him, I wouldn't be surprised if Tim Patrick follows Ben Johnson as they're looking for a third receiver because they're more than likely not going to re-sign Keenan Allen. And so
Mhm.
then obviously then too as well, we're talking about offensive weapons. So we ended up re-signing Dan Skipper, that left tackle wide receiver hybrid out of Detroit. I mean, what a stud and value that he brings to the team. But no, all joking aside, though, I think he is a great swing tackle. We've seen him fill in and start games and be a solid contributor, but also too with the type of offense that. And now I say this with Ben Johnson, maybe he's another guy that might follow Ben Johnson to Chicago, but he's just been a very solid contributor when it comes to that swing tackle capabilities and being that six man on the goal line stand as well. Gives them a
Mhm.
lot of options and super athletic. I also think too, people in Detroit, I think they just love him. How do you not like Dan Skipper, especially too after everything that happened in that Cowboys game in 2023? So
Yeah.
that's that offensive side of the ball. And then Ryan on the defensive side of the ball, we re-signed and even added players at all levels. And so I don't know if you want to walk through that.
Yeah, yeah. So we brought back Derek Barnes. I just think that's a good value signing on a 3-year, $18 million deal. Levi Onwuzurike we brought back as well. Just keep that defensive interior intact. He was a good interior penetrator. And so I feel like that is just something next to Aidan Hutchinson that you do want. And then also Stephon Gilmore, you went out and he's kind of become just that veteran corner who I guess is just trying to rack up as many jerseys as he can while he can. And so go and get him. He's a when on the field and playing to his full potential, he's a premier corner, but he is 35 years old at this point. And so he's not the defensive player of the year that he once was, but he's still a really solid corner. So he can be kind of the veteran
Yeah,
in that room. You let Carlton Davis go, you bring in Stephon Gilmore, and then I feel like you can go and maybe snag somebody in this draft here to kind of be on that third level of the defense.
exactly. And I think too as well, it'll be good for Terry and Arnold. It'll be good for Enos Rakestraw, Brian
Mhm.
Branch, and then even Kirby Joseph as well, just to still learn from a guy like Stephon Gilmore. And at the same time too, as we've talked about, thinking into the future with the 2026 cap, Carlton Davis would have a pretty hefty cap space tag with the contract he's going to sign, and so
Mhm.
that would, and so I think you're killing multiple birds with one stone here with bringing in Stephon Gilmore as well, and so those are some of the other couple additions that we've had there, and I think Ryan too. There was a couple other external people we were looking at
Yeah.
signing as well.
So some of the other ones that we looked at, they were mostly interior offensive linemen, but Tevin Jenkins I thought was an interesting one. He has struggled with injuries a lot in his career, but when he's been on the field, that could be an interesting option there. Just because when he's been on the field, he's been really good. James Daniels was another good interior offensive lineman. Unfortunately, last year he tore his Achilles, so that might be another good kind of 1 year kind of prove it deal, and then maybe he can get an extension from there. Trying to remember, were there any others that you had in mind?
Those guys there, Patrick McCarry, if they would be another
Yeah.
guy, I think they'd want to bring in at left guard as well, and that's where I think because they're after all these moves here and out of these guys, they'd be sitting at 36 million, and You want to have some room, obviously, for cap space, and maybe for the Lions, you want a lot of extra cap room in case there's injuries. Hopefully, never again like that for the Detroit Lions. But I
Yeah.
also think too, and I would need to double check on the rule exactly, Ryan. I know you looked at it before, but there is some cap that can roll over to next year, and so I think that's kind of
Yeah.
one of the things if you're looking into the future, as Aidan Hutchinson one is going to be an absolute staple for this team and for this defense. Jameson Williams also too. We'll have to see how he does this year. If he has an off year, I wouldn't be surprised if they just pick up his rookie 5th year and then kind of go at it again.
They have to do
But
that this offseason.
well,
You yeah.
so they'll probably end up doing that there. I'm thinking more long term. Those is Jameson Williams worthy of a long term contract, but still though they'll probably pick up his 5th year rookie option, just with the combination that he brings and what he brings to that
Mhm.
Lions offense across from Amon-Ra St. Brown. But Aidan Hutchinson though is going to be paid as like one of the top edge rushers in the NFL.
Oh,
Once when that time
rightfully
comes.
so.
Oh,
Yeah.
and rightfully so, absolutely. So
Yeah.
start looking at that cap space as well and start managing that from there. But I think one other option, as we mentioned, could be that left guard spot going through free agency, and then in the draft, I think it's going to be best player available. Probably heavily focused on the defense, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a sneaky other, if they could get another elite receiver to help out that offense.
One thing too that I think would be interesting, so if they pick up Jamo's 5th year option, and then they could potentially trade him next offseason and get a top 50 pick, and
Potentially,
then save the cap money. And Jameson Williams has been great when he's been on the field, but he just hasn't been on the field all that much. He's had a couple a suspension. Uh, he came into the league injured, and then he got injured again, I believe, as well. And so I just feel like he could be one of those guys where there's just always something going on. We'll have to see. This season I think will be really telling. But
he had he did have to be fair to him, he did have his close to his first full year. I think it looks like he missed week 8. I think I forget when their bye was because he missed both week 8 and week 9. It's like he missed a couple games this year, but a lot of people
yeah,
do. And so, but this is his first full year, and well, I want to see him do it again before saying like the Lions should commit to him long term and see what happens. So we'll have to see
yeah.
how this next year goes for him. Because if he does, I mean, I think him and Amon-Ra St. Brown is an amazing receiver combo. But
Yeah.
is he going to be worth the money he's going to be asking for?
Yeah, no, and that's the big thing there. And if you can recoup top 50 draft capital instead of giving them that big contract, I think that would be a conversation worth having. But that is not for this offseason. That is for next offseason. So let's go ahead and wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you thought of this Detroit Lions mock free agency. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? And other than that, we'll see you guys next time.